Hi, this is Daniel. So I have another awesome interview with a gentleman from California. I hear you're from.
Yes.
And so, what group are you with? Introduce yourself. Tell me kind of your background.
Well, my name is Ricardo Megalas. I'm the founder and executive director of the charter school Academia Avance. It's in Los Angeles, and we're happy and proud to be here in Houston with about 3 dozen leaders from across the country, Milwaukee, New York, Texas, California, everywhere. And we wanted to use this opportunity because today it's about choosing which presidential candidate. There's so many, right? We're now down to about, say, 10, and voters need to choose. But that's an important auto-determination decision of who you're going to vote for president. Well, same thing for school. Parents vote every year for where are they going to send their kids. And so we have a solution in charter schools that has proven to work for families, especially for African American families and Latino families. And we were with about 600 of them yesterday here in Houston.
Okay.
And we want to bring attention to them.
So you think charter schools are the way to go for the future?
Let me make sure. They're the way to go for those that choose them. In other words, this is not trying to replace anything.
Okay.
Right? We need all kinds of solutions, and we want the solutions that family choose to go to. Right? What we are against is them getting rid of solutions. And what we're seeing is a big push right now, and it's playing out in California, against charter schools, which is great if you're saying these kids now are going to go to some other great schools. But if that's not the case, then why are we taking away a solution that really works?
Right. Okay. So you're following the candidates, like you said. So obviously Andrew Yang is my favorite. But what do you think of some of the solutions that he has? He wants to pay teachers more, obviously. But what do you think? Your general opinion of what Andrew Yang is?
He's proven himself to have very interesting positions. Very different positions, and partly that's kind of in the spirit of charter schools, is offer something different, something that's actually has more grounded in reality, what's really working, and so that's interesting to me. We just need all of the candidates because we haven't heard any of them actually just flat out say charter schools should be respected as a choice, and so we would encourage candidate Yang to do that.
So you want them to just say charter schools should stay as a choice?
Yes, exactly.
Well, that's a very simple platform.
Yep.
So definitely, I don't know exactly where he stands on that, but I will find out for you.
I mean, look, imagine if you don't know, we even know less. So we would really appreciate you being able to take that message back to him and say, look at the issue. If he needs more information, you can talk to any of us. He's happy to visit my school.
Well, there are over 100 policies on his website. I just don't know if one of the 100 is something to do with that. Right. But I'm going to definitely research that and get back to you.
We will hold you to that. Good. All right.
So to follow up with you, you were concerned about candidates saying something about charter schools, and if they were for them or if they were against them, or just finding out where they stood, right?
Well, our intent as a group for being in Houston during the presidential debate. So the issue was, can we put the topic of charter schools inserted into the debate, or just public education in general? And obviously we did, and it was one of the later, toward the back half of the debate. It was a question, and so we can explore that. But on the issue of the main purpose for us, in that sense, was accomplished.
Okay, well, that's good. So during the debate, and I'm trying to bring the information up as well as I talk to you, but during the debate, one of the announcers said that Andrew Yang was one of the top candidates regarding charter schools, and I haven't researched a lot into why that person was saying that specifically about Andrew, but I did go back and I saw that he
has a couple of tweets about charter schools, and then some other interviews where he mentions them. So how did you feel about the discussion? First of all, yes, they brought it up, but what was your feelings of the discussion, and did you want me to and go over what they said?
Well, that would be. Why don't we do that, right? So there's 10 candidates,
Mhm.
and let's just briefly agree on what was said by those 10. So if you just want to go down your list, and from what I remember, and what you have in your notes.
Okay, so I'm bringing up the information I have exactly of what was said here.
Okay, I'm at. Do you have like a transcript of the debate?
No, I only have for Andrew Yang, basically, and what was said with him. And the thing is, it all centers around him, though, because there was 2 other candidates that briefly said something, but it wasn't substance. It wasn't a lot of substance. So
but there is a lot to interpret.
So basically, they asked him his question, and he said that he was pro good schools, is what his statement was, and that he often comes by from a place of where he doesn't want to limit things, but he wants to incentivize. And his kind of take was that he wanted to incentivize good schools, regardless of them being public or charter or whatever they are.
I'm making a list here, and maybe you can help me with this. The 10 candidates that were there, in the debate itself,
Right.
I only recall
basically only 3 candidates that spoke about charter schools.
Right. The question was posed, I think, first to Andrew Yang, and then it went to Julian Castro and Cory Booker.
Right.
So let's just go through those.
Right.
To parse out what they said was Julian Castro. The key thing that I recall him saying was that the myth that charter schools are better than the traditional public schools is not true. That it's just a myth.
They said they are not, he said.
Right. That's a very, in one way, it's a safe answer because, well, based on which studies, which myth are you actually talking about? So it comes across as slightly anti-charter.
Right.
And it also comes across as supportive of the traditional schools, which means supportive of the teachers in the traditional schools, which is how that debate always plays out. So there's some code going on here.
Right.
Right. And the anti-charter side has launched a campaign over the last several years to have all of these studies that show how, and these are the words that Randy Weingarten uses of the American Federation of Teachers, that, well, studies have shown that charter schools are on par with the traditional schools, right? So if they're not really doing that much better, in other words, why do we need them?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is the battle of the studies. So I can line up another 5 studies on the other side that says, no, charters are doing better here, 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 and here, right? I can share with you our direct evidence for our school in Los Angeles. The state issued, and on one particular measure, right? So California issued the college going rate data. They had not released that data for 8 years. And if you look at the data for 2018,
mm-hmm.
For the 196 high schools that are located within the Los Angeles Unified School District, the top 20 schools, in other words, the schools that had the highest rate of sending students to college, right? Of those top 20, 15 were charter schools.
Okay.
Right. So, right. Well, that's something to interpret right there.
Well,
and of the 5 that were not charter schools, 4 of them were magnet schools,
Okay.
which have, you know, they have a different enrollment policy than just regular traditional schools, right?
Okay. Well,
So
Andrew Yang would
go ahead.
be quick to point out that the outcomes of children's education, the schools and teachers have about 30 to 35% of the results from, or the outcomes for the results, and that most of the outcome comes from parents and home life. And so not only do we need to pay teachers more because they're invaluable, but also that we need to put money in the hands of regular Americans so that they can better benefit students in their education and their home life. So that's another reason for the universal basic income freedom dividend.
It absolutely must be, and this has been our experience in over 15 years, the school must be in a partnership with parents. If you're not in a partnership with parents, you just made the job that much harder, right? And so we're Avance in that group of 20, we rank 16th, right? So of all the high schools in LA Unified, we rank 16th for that one particular measure. So, I mean, if, just to parse out Julian's message is, you know, based on what data is he making that statement? Because there's other data that shows, right? So if anything, to qualify it, it's not that the myth is not true. It's just that there are data sets for both sides, is what I would say. Now, I will tell you that we actually, the group I was with, had a conversation with them the night before in the hotel. And directly to us, he was saying, oh, don't get me wrong. I believe charter schools are doing a great thing. So I felt it was...
Conversation with who?
With Julian Castro.
Okay.
Right? Candidate Julian Castro. We talked to him directly, and he was telling us, oh, don't get me wrong. I believe charter schools are doing a good thing.
Right.
Those two statements seemingly are at odds, but they're not.
Right.
Right? Because he's just saying, well, the myth. So this kind of goes to the point that I'm going to make, that a lot of these candidates have made statements that are, you have to understand them as code and signaling, and that they're not necessarily complete. So, for example, Biden and Sanders have both been quoted as saying, well, we're against for-profit charter schools, right? Okay. We believe charter school, you know, and there's this ambiguity on the fact that charter schools are public schools. People keep forgetting that. They keep as if the traditional schools are the only public schools. No, charter schools are public schools. We use public funds,
sure.
Right? And at least in California, the number of privately run for-profit charter operations is less than 3%, and it's only a legacy from the original part of the law, and every year they're less. Now, there are some states where charter operators are allowed to be for-profit entities.
Okay.
Right? So here's, again, where you got to parse it out. So for a candidate to say, I'm against for-profit charters, well, you know, so am I. And you're really talking about a very small number. And that's really not talking to, but what about, are you for nonprofit charters, right? And so it's a half message, kind of like Julian's message. And it allows for a lot of ambiguity. But what it does is allows the candidate to be able to turn to the anti-charter side and say, see, I made a statement. And then to turn to
politician-y to me.
Yes, exactly. And so Andrew Yang did not do that.
Right.
Right. I think in his statement in the debate, he was unequivocal. Oh, no, I'm for charter schools. Right. Obviously just for good ones, because no one's for bad charter schools, really. So that's also kind of a non-statement. But so I appreciated his directness and frankness in the debate. And plus, he has other statements that he's made via other mediums that supports the fact that he is in favor of allowing the charter school model to continue. And that's all we're asking for.
Okay.
So let me get to the key point that our group is saying. And it goes back to this idea of myth, measures based on what? It is very clear for African American families and Latino families, and the studies do back this up, that when high need areas in schools, in districts that are very stressed, in populations that are otherwise have few education options, in that context, absolutely charter schools have done a great job. Right.
Okay.
And so this is where Julian's message of it's a myth is, yeah, well, catering to who? If we're speaking for our communities, it absolutely has been a good solution. And those parents will immediately talk to you about why it's been good for them. And that's who we turned out in Houston. And that's who we're trying to bring that message. So one feedback that we got, even though Elizabeth Warren was not asked a question, and in the debate, the issue of that I recall, the charter thing did not go to her. In our follow-up of comments, we believe that we heard Elizabeth Warren say, "Whoa, wait a minute. If the African American and Latino communities feel that they are benefiting from charter schools, well, I don't want to go against them." Right? And so I think as this conversation continues and people start to see this isn't us versus them,
Well,
teachers versus kids.
let me ask you this. Who is unequivocally against charter schools?
The loudest voice of these candidates has been Bernie Sanders.
Okay.
Right? And Bernie Sanders in this election, but also in the last one. His position, his people were always moving against charter schools. Now, I'll leave it to you to explore why that is. And one of the biggest manifestations of that is it was Bernie's people, his staff, his operatives, that were at the Democratic National Convention trying to insert language for the Democratic Party platform to officially adopt an anti-charter plank, right? And anybody who was there will tell you, oh yeah, I was talking to some people last night about it. I was there, I saw it, is what they told me. I wasn't, but I'm saying this is not some kind of hidden news. It's easy to research that there were people at the convention doing it, and that those people could easily be identified as being part of Bernie's group, right? So he was anti-charter in 2016. He's again being not friendly to us this time around. So that's another one that we can mark off.
So is your concern, is your worry then that if a Bernie Sanders gets elected, then he will look to ban or defund, or I mean, what's the negative future that?
Okay, so let me understand your question to be, well, what's the real impact here, especially at the federal level for the president, right? Because the fact is, public education is primarily controlled by the states, right? And in California, the funding that comes from the feds is really only 10%. Okay. So it's not the majority impact. However, it sets the tone, and there are many important funding sources that come to charter schools, at least in our state in California, that are derived from federal funds. It would be a serious impact if those suddenly got dried up, right? We did enjoy charter supportive policies during the Obama era, right? And it would be unfortunate for that to get scaled back. Now let's just skip what's happened for the last 3 years, because it's just kind of chaos with this president. So let's not even worry about that. But your question is, what would happen if someone like Bernie were to come in, right? It's twofold, right? So you would reduce the supportive policies at the federal level.
Okay.
Right? But I think more importantly, it would signal back to the states, because as I mentioned, it's the states where the action goes on, is that charter policy is no longer to be supported or expanded or improved. in which case the state legislatures then would move against charter schools. And that is what is played out in the last 6 months here in California.
Okay.
Is that the Democratic Party, because they have a supermajority in California, and the anti-charter forces here are very, very strong, made a big push in the legislature with the new governor to create legislatively a context that was very anti-charter, that with, you know, in the medium term would drastically make it harder for schools like ours to go forward. And so our fear is that, well, if that's what the signaling is coming from Washington, it's only going to make it even worse in our state in California, but also in other states like in Texas, right? Because that was a big push in Texas also. So that's a long answer to your question, but yeah, it would be a bad situation for us if the Democratic Party, through its choice in presidential candidate, goes for somebody who is very openly and strongly against charters, and Bernie Sanders is such a candidate.
So
now, if we go back to the debate,
yeah.
right? They asked Andrew Yang. The question then went to Julian Castro, who made that statement about the myth. So let's say his was a wishy-washy to not so supportive question. But he also didn't just flat out say, I'm against charter schools.
A C+ answer?
Yeah, I'd give it a C-, right? I'd give it a C-, right? Now, so then Cory Booker weighed in.
Right.
And he has a strong history of working with charter schools when he was in New Jersey,
Okay.
right? So he can't run away from that.
Right.
And if you were to suddenly come out anti-charter, a lot of folks would say, like, yeah, you're flip-flopping, right? So he's trying to thread the needle. And he's the one who said, look, I'm for high-quality charters. Now, of course, because nobody's for low-quality charters.
Right.
But we'll take that statement, and we'll take that support. And I think he's also aligning it with the position, which is a little bit more than what candidate Yang is doing. I think Cory Booker, one way to interpret his statements is, hey, this is a solution that's working for families that have the highest need, that where African-American, Latino communities or low-income communities where they don't have any other options. So high-quality charters in that context, absolutely. So, I give Cory Booker a B in his answer. Now, if we go through the other ones, so we talked about Sanders. Beto O'Rourke has already kind of been on the record of being leaning in supportive, right? He's not anti, right? And it also helps that his wife was affiliated with a charter school in El Paso, right? So he's already on record as being somewhat positive, right? He's not throwing rocks.
Okay.
Where we're a little bit worried is, well, where is the front runners? Where is Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren?
Mm-hmm.
And they've been kind of a little bit more equivocal. Biden at one point publicly did say that he was against for-profit charters, but like I mentioned, that's a qualified answer. And if you're really in the debate, that's a non-answer, right?
Yeah.
And so then you have
to play more political.
He's being very political, and he doesn't have all the prior record of being anti-charter the way Sanders has.
Okay.
Right? So you can highly qualify Biden as, like, he's just waffling. And Warren, we have to see. Now, Warren is on the very progressive side. People put her closer to Sanders. We'll see. But this comment that I mentioned, and I can't source it for you, right? So this is just triple hearsay for me, but that Elizabeth Warren did say, hey, wait a second. If the African American and Latino communities are saying that charter schools work for them, well, I don't want to be against that. That's promising. And we're going to push on that, and we're going to push her on that. So we'll see where that goes. Amy Klobuchar, Buttigieg, I don't know where they stand on this. I don't think they've had a public comment on it. And again, that's our point. We need to keep pushing for somebody to finally say something so we know where they are. And so that leaves Kamala Harris, who's coming from California, which is hugely contentious, and I don't also, because she's coming as a prosecutor, don't know that she was super strong on either side. So we'll see where that goes.
So how do you feel that Andrew Yang is polling better than Kamala Harris in California at this point?
I think that's interesting in that I think Kamala Harris, who's very well known in California, has had to spend a lot of time making her getting name recognition in the rest of the country, which was what was on NPR today, right? The time that she plans to spend in Iowa.
Right.
And I think Andrew Yang kind of is, as the complete outsider, thinking in a different way, being innovative, is getting a lot of attention. And so it doesn't surprise me that nationally his polling is strong.
Okay. Well, obviously we think as part of the Yang gang, we feel like he's going to get the nominee. So, I mean, I think his approach to charter schools really doesn't matter what it is, he's talked about it a lot, that he's a problem solver and he just wants to find what solves the problem. And I don't know. I mean, our schools on a large part of our school data shows that we are not competing on a world level. So, I mean, that is a problem that we need to solve, especially for the future.
Public education has lots of problems. And so it's important in that debate to identify, well, which problem are you focusing on, right? Is it the fiscal challenge that the traditional school district model has in terms of dealing with, retirement liabilities that in many cases are making school districts bankrupt? Is that the problem we're talking about? Or are we talking about the student achievement outcomes and comparative to other countries and in terms of just our own needs? Or if we just focus on Los Angeles, for the longest time, going back over 30 years, there are now no Fortune 500 companies headquartered in Los Angeles. And at one time, I believe there was as many as 50, right? So between 1960 and 2000, we lost all of this corporate sector in Los Angeles. And one of the reasons that is cited in the research that I've seen is because of the labor market and the difficulty of them finding the jobs. Well, that's a reflection of the schools. So if that's the problem you're focusing on, which I think Andrew Yang is, hey, are our kids ready for this new crazy future? And, how often do you hear the skills gap question, or that all these companies are like, look, we would love to invest. We're just struggling to get these jobs. This is why we got to bring people from other countries. That's absurd. How is it that we can't get our kids to be in all these new expanding industries? It should be happening here. That's a reflection of what's happening with our schools.
Right. And then Andrew would also focus on how universities are being overprescribed and technical, more technical jobs, because they won't be automated away easily either. So.
Well, I have a very specific thought on that. And mind you, I run a school for 15 years, and our exclusive goal has been to get our students, which are in a super high need area, into a four-year university, right? And so I think if in a conversation, I would love to have a conversation with candidate Yang and explain to him, look, every kid deserves 4 years to explore how to expand their skill set, right? And whether you want to call that a technical education or a musical education or a military career or wherever it is, but every kid 18 deserves, and as a society, we have to commit to giving them that space, right? I think it starts to get into a technicality of, well, should they start off on a vocational program, or should it be some this, that, or the other? Hey, it's just college. There is a university for everybody. Yeah, there is. Well, not everyone has to go to Stanford.
I think it's more of the prescription, and in the future. I mean, saying that if you do 4 years at a university, you're going to have a $70,000, $80,000 job that you can rely on, and people get out of the university with school debt, and those jobs are not there that they were promised. I mean,
But I would recast that as that's not the problem of the university. That's the problem of the adults not having guided this kid to the right university, to the place that's really going to have them maximize their potential, to one that's not going to overburden them with debt, right? This thing of like, I'm only going to go to a top tier school, you know, and we have families that are willing to pay millions of dollars to rig the system to get them in, or families that don't have millions of dollars that are incurring tens of thousands of dollars in debt. So now I'm not in agreement with any of that, but I believe the issue is it's a misguided set of priorities from the adults, because the kids don't know. It's from the adults in terms of not ensuring that they're going to a school that is aligned with their interests and actually is productive in terms of what their career interests are, and leads to a sustainable living wage, which is really what is the objective behind this. And let me insert in here also the fact that we've slid backwards as a country. Under the previous administration, there was a lot of work, and it took a lot of work to curtail the damaging impact of the for-profit 2-year schools that were just creating debt for kids to give them some bogus certification, right? And it's unfortunate that this current president has undone a lot of that regulatory work, and now that predatory college sector is, you know, back in strength again. Well, we'll try to fix that, but I just thought I'd insert that point.
okay. And well, I mean, we'll see what happens. Obviously, we think that Andrew, especially now, is gaining a lot more, or starting to gain even more momentum, and so looking to push him over the finish line for at least, you know, winning the, right now just focused on winning the primary at this point. We got more.
And over these next, I mean, so it's still a long ways to go. You know, the actual voting, you know, the people speaking by voting, we're still 3-4 months away from that. You know, let's see how Super Tuesday plays out, and it'll start to happen pretty quick.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, right now, people need to be registered to vote for the primaries. So, I mean, it's going to happen very quickly at the same time. I mean, and if you're in some states like New York, you have to be registered by October 10th to be able to vote in the primary. So.
Oh wow, that I didn't realize that. Yeah. So, but the if anything, I appreciate candidates Yang taking a position that is less equivocal. It's pretty easy to understand. Like most of the things that he's saying, he's trying to put it in more simple, plain terms. And I believe his role in this whole process, this early in the process, is going to ensure that on this particular issue, charter schools and the role that they play for families, I thank him for the position that he's taken.
So are you part of a charter school organization, or are you just representing your specific school, I guess? Or is there a lot?
There are several organizations, right? So first, I'm the executive director of our school, but we're a small school in Los Angeles. I'm also the chair of the Coalition for Public Independent Charter Schools. That's a national organization, right? And so the advocacy for charter schools through this initiative is aligned with that. But this is not the work that we did in Houston was not directly from that organization, right? What that work was a coalition of African American and Latino charter school leaders from across the country, led by Dr. Howard Fuller out of Milwaukee, and also Steve Perry from Connecticut and New York, Dr. Steve Perry. So this is not an official group or organization. It's just a collection of charter school people saying, "Hey, this is what we got. This message needs to be out there."
Okay. Well, is there anything you want to add before we go? That pretty much cover it.
Well, First off, if you have a way of communicating to candidate Yang, thank him. And he was the only candidate that we got to see as they drove into the debate. And he stuck his head out the window and he cheered us on. And I appreciated that recognition that he gave us. I will say that it was kind of obvious to me, and I think obvious to everybody, that he had the biggest group there outside compared to all the other candidates. His was clearly way, way, way bigger, right? So that's kudos to him on that. And I appreciate his very straight, clear message. And if he can, I just want to point out that charter schools are a solution that have, despite what Julian Castro said, it's not a myth. They have helped Latino and African American communities, and those communities are saying, look, don't forget, you need our vote too.
Right.
So don't piss us off by threatening our schools.
Sure. Yeah. And what I appreciate about Andrew most of the time is he's pretty clear and precise with his answers. He doesn't try to.
He has something to back it up. Yeah. He has always something to back it up.
So, okay. Well, hopefully he'll get your endorsement someday. But I appreciate you taking the time to talk this out, and we'll have it all on the internet for everyone to see here shortly. Okay.
How are you going to post your results? This interview, or what is are you consolidating it to a written piece?
No, it's going to this video, and the one that I did with you live will be on the YouTube channel, American Jobs Factor.
Okay, thank you.
So everybody can see it and subscribe and share and do all that good stuff for this video. And thank you again, Ricardo, for talking with me. And let's get a good candidate in there for 2020.
Let's keep this process going. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. Have a good day.
You too.
Okay, everyone. So that was my interview with Ricardo Megalas from the charter school in California. And I will have links in the bottom. And just keep pushing for Andrew Yang 2020. And we'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.
But thanks for joining me here, American Jobs Factory, jobs for the future.
Okay.
And share, subscribe, and we'll talk to you later.
What's the website?
American Jobs Factory.
AmericanJobsFactory.com. All right.
Exactly. Take care. Bye.